The Empire had conquered 17 star systems in the last 200 years. Their warships darkened the skies of countless worlds. Their soldiers marched across planets like unstoppable waves, and at the heart of their military power stood their champion warriors, beings bred for combat since birth. Was the greatest of them all. He stood 8 feet tall. His body was covered in thick scales that shimmered between blue and green depending on the light. He had 4 arms, each one strong enough to bend steel bars like soft clay. His eyes, large and yellow with vertical pupils, had witnessed 847 battles. He had won every single one. No enemy had ever made him bleed. No challenge had ever made him afraid. When the humans of Earth sent their request to join the Galactic Coalition, the High Council laughed. These small, soft creatures from a tiny blue planet wanted to sit among the great species of the galaxy. The idea was amusing. High Commander, leader of the military, decided to teach the humans a lesson in humility. He called to his chamber on the capital ship. "The humans believe they are warriors," said, his voice rumbling like distant thunder. "They want to prove themselves worthy of the coalition." "Humans are weak," replied. "I have studied their biology. They have no natural weapons, no claws, no scales, no venom. They cannot survive in extreme temperatures. They need sleep every single day. They are fragile." "Yes, but they are proud. They have proposed a test." His mouth twisted into something like a smile. "They want us to send a warrior through their most difficult military training program, something called Marine Bootcamp." Made a sound of contempt. "Training for how long?" 12 weeks. "I will complete it in half that time." "Good. When you succeed easily, the humans will understand their true place in the galaxy. They will see that even our warriors find their challenges simple. Go, show them what superiority looks like." Bowed and left to prepare for his journey to Earth. On the other side of the galaxy, in a country called South Korea, a very different kind of warrior received the news. Staff Sergeant Park had served in the Republic of Korea Marine Corps for 15 years. He was not tall. He was not especially muscular. Standing at 5 feet and 9 inches, he looked ordinary in every way. But those who knew him understood the truth. Was the most feared drill instructor in the entire military. His voice could make grown men cry. His training methods had broken thousands of recruits and rebuilt them into something stronger. Every Marine who passed through his hands came out transformed. Some hated him during training. All of them thanked him later. When heard that an alien warrior was coming to his boot camp, he simply nodded. "So the galaxy wants to see what humans are made of," he said to his fellow instructors. "Fine, but this alien follows the same rules as everyone else. No special treatment, no exceptions. He eats what the recruits eat. He sleeps where they sleep. He does what they do." "Sir, the reports say this is incredibly strong," said Sergeant O, his second in command. "He can lift over 2,000 kilograms. He can run at speeds that would win Olympic medals. His combat record is perfect." Looked at her with calm eyes. "Can he fold with hospital corners?" Blinked. "I don't know, sir." "Can he wake up at 4 in the morning after 3 hours of sleep and still function? Can he eat food he hates without complaining? Can he put the needs of his team before his own glory?" Shook his head slowly. "Strength is easy. Discipline is hard. We will see what this alien is truly made of." Corporal was assigned as the official liaison between the alien visitor and the military base. She was 26 years old, smart, and calm under pressure. More importantly, she had completed Marine Boot Camp herself 3 years ago. She knew exactly what was walking into. On the day of the alien's arrival, stood on the landing field with a small group of officials. The sky was gray with clouds. A light rain was falling. It was early morning, and the air smelled like wet earth and diesel fuel. The alien transport ship descended through the clouds like a silver blade. It was beautiful in a cold, frightening way. The technology was clearly far beyond anything humans had built. The ship landed without a sound, and a ramp extended from its belly. Walked down the ramp. Had seen pictures, but nothing prepared her for the reality. He was massive. His scales caught the dim light and seemed to glow. His 4 arms hung at his sides, each one thick with muscle. When he moved, it was with the easy confidence of a predator who had never met anything that could challenge him. His translation device, a small disc attached to his chest, crackled to life. "I am champion of the Empire. I am ready to demonstrate superiority through your training program." The officials shifted nervously. Some of them took unconscious steps backward. But not. The drill instructor walked forward until he was standing directly in front of the alien. The top of his head barely reached his chest. He had to crane his neck to look up at those yellow eyes. "You're late," said. His voice was flat and hard. His head tilted in confusion. "My ship arrived at the designated coordinates at the designated time." The designated time was 600. "It is now 6:03. You are 3 minutes late." Eyes never wavered. "In my boot camp, late means punishment. Drop and give me 50 push-ups. Now." Silence fell over the landing field. Watched the alien's face carefully. She saw confusion there, then annoyance, then something that might have been the beginning of anger. "I do not understand," said slowly. "I am a champion of the Empire. I do not do push-ups on command like some common." "I don't care if you're the champion of the entire universe," interrupted. His voice rose to the legendary roar that had haunted the nightmares of countless recruits. "You are in MY Bootcamp now. Here, you are nothing. You are a recruit. You are dirt beneath my boots. And when I give you an order, you say yes, SIR, and you do it." The officials looked terrified, fought to keep a smile off her face. Stood frozen for a long moment. In his entire life, no one had ever spoken to him this way. He was treated with respect and fear. Other warriors bowed when he passed. Commanders sought his advice. He was a legend. But here, on this small, wet planet, this tiny human was screaming at him like he was worthless. Part of wanted to laugh. Part of him wanted to simply walk back to his ship and leave. But he had a mission. He had given his word to the High Commander, and never broke their word. Slowly lowered himself to the ground. The wet concrete was cold against his scales. He placed 2 of his hands on the ground and began to do push-ups. 1, he counted, 2, 3. Louder screamed. 4, 5, 6. Walked in a circle around the alien, watching with sharp eyes. "Faster. My grandmother does push-ups faster than this, and she's been dead for 10 years. Watched the scene with growing interest. The alien was physically capable of doing push-ups all day without getting tired. That wasn't the point. The point was something else entirely. The point was teaching that strength alone meant nothing here. When the 50 push-ups were done, rose to his feet. His body was not tired at all, but something in his eyes had changed. There was a new emotion there, something he rarely felt. Uncertainty. "Welcome to boot camp, recruit," said quietly. "The next 12 weeks will be the hardest of your life. I don't care how many battles you've won. I don't care how strong you are. Here, you will learn what it truly means to be a warrior, or you will break." He turned and began walking toward the barracks. "Follow me. Your training begins now." Followed, his 4 arms hanging at his sides, his yellow eyes fixed on the small human walking ahead of him. He had expected this to be easy. He was beginning to realize he had been wrong. By the 3rd day, was confused. Nothing made sense. He could lift more weight than any human on the base. He could run faster in short distances. When they practiced hand-to-hand combat, his 4 arms made him impossible to defeat. In every physical test, he performed better than the human recruits around him. Yet somehow he was failing. The morning inspection had been a disaster. Stood beside his bed in the barracks, watching Staff Sergeant walk down the row of bunks with slow, careful steps. The other recruits stood perfectly still, their eyes fixed straight ahead, their bodies tight with fear. stopped in front of his bed. He stared at it for a long moment. Then he bent down and examined the corner of the blanket. Recruit. Yes, sir. What is this? Looked at his bed. He had made it exactly as he had been shown. The blanket was flat. The pillow was in place. Everything seemed correct to him. It is my bed, sir. Your bed is UNSAT. His voice exploded like a bomb. The corner fold is 2 centimeters off standard. 2 centimeters. Do you think 2 centimeters does not matter? Sir, I do not understand how the angle of a blanket fold relates to combat effectiveness. Did I ask for your opinion, recruit? No, sir. Remake this bed, now, then remake it again. Keep remaking it until it is perfect or until I get tired of watching you fail. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Remade the bed. It took him 9 attempts before finally grunted and moved on to the next recruit. Later that morning, during the 10-kilometer run, finished first. His powerful legs carried him across the finish line while the human recruits were still struggling along the path behind him. He stood at the end, breathing easily, waiting for the others. Appeared beside him. Congratulations, recruit, you can run fast. The drill instructor's voice was flat and cold. Now where is your buddy? His head tilted. My buddy, sir. Lee, you were assigned to be his running partner. Where is he? Turned and looked back at the running path. Far behind, he could see a thin figure struggling forward. Lee was one of the smallest recruits in the platoon. He came from a city called, and he had a habit of pushing himself until his body simply gave up. Right now, he looked like he was about to collapse. He is slow, sir, said. This is not my concern. I completed the run as required. Stepped closer. His voice dropped to a quiet, dangerous tone. Not your concern. Let me explain something to you, alien. In my Marine Corps, no one finishes alone. When you are assigned a buddy, his success is your success. His failure is your failure. You do not leave him behind. Ever. Sir, the strong advance and the weak are left behind. This is the way of efficient warfare. Those who cannot keep up have no place. I don't care about, pointed back at, go back, help him finish, or you fail this run entirely. Sir, that is not logical. I have already completed. Geo now. Went. He jogged back along the path until he reached. The young human was barely moving, his face red with effort, his breath coming in painful gasps. Sweat poured down his skin. His legs were shaking. Did not understand why he was doing this. It made no sense, but he had been given an order and followed orders. He grabbed his arm with one of his hands and began half carrying, half dragging him toward the finish line. Leave me, gasped. I can do it myself. The instructor ordered me to help you. I don't need help. You clearly do. Be quiet and move your legs. They crossed the finish line together. Immediately collapsed on the ground, coughing and gasping for air. Some of the other recruits gathered around him, offering water and words of encouragement. Stood apart watching this strange display. Why did they care so much about one weak member of the group? An would have been left behind long ago. He would have been assigned to some lesser role, away from the warriors. His weakness would not have been tolerated. But these humans acted like his survival mattered, like his presence had value beyond his physical capabilities. It made no sense. That evening, the recruits gathered in the mess hall for dinner, sat alone at the end of one table, eating the strange human food that had been provided for him. It tasted wrong, and his body was not processing it well, but he ate it anyway. Did not complain about food. He watched the other recruits as they ate. They sat in groups, talking and laughing despite their exhaustion. Lee sat with a female recruit named Myra, a former boxer with short hair and hard eyes. Nearby was Han, a young man who cried every night after lights out but never quit during the day. And there was the smallest recruit in the entire platoon, A woman who barely reached 5 feet tall but whose eyes held an intensity that made even uncomfortable. They shared their food. When struggled to eat because his arms were too tired to lift his spoon, Myra simply fed him without being asked. When looked like he might break down, quietly told him a joke that made him smile. They were weak, all of them, could defeat any of them in combat without effort, yet they had something he did not understand. Corporal sat down across from him. She carried a tray of food and a small smile. "You look confused," she said. "I am," admitted. "I do not understand these humans. They waste energy caring for weak members of the group. They slow themselves down to help others. This is inefficient." Ate a bite of rice before answering, "Is it?" Of course. On each warrior advances based on individual strength. The strong rise, the weak fall. This is how an empire is built. And when your strong ones face something stronger than themselves. Considered the question. They fight. If they lose, they die with honor. Alone. The word hung in the air between them. Found he did not have an answer. Leaned forward. "Let me tell you something about humans. We are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We know this. We have no claws, no scales, no natural weapons. We die easily. A fall can kill us. A disease can kill us. The cold or heat can kill us." She paused. "But we are still here. We survived ice ages and famines and wars and plagues. Do you know why?" "No." "Because we never face anything alone. When one of us falls, the others carry them. When one of us is weak, the others are strong for them. We are not a species of individual warriors. We are a species of families, of tribes, of teams." She pointed at the recruits sharing their food. "That is not weakness. That is our greatest strength." Looked at the humans again. He tried to see them the way described, not as weak individuals but as parts of something larger. He could not do it. The concept was too foreign to his mind. But somewhere deep inside him, a small crack had formed in his certainty. Late that night, lay in his bunk, unable to sleep. The human beds were too small for his body, and his scales kept getting caught on the rough blanket material. Around him, the barracks was filled with the sounds of exhausted humans breathing and occasionally crying. Han was crying again. He tried to be quiet about it, but his hearing was far better than human ears. He could hear every sob, every choked breath. Part of felt contempt. A warrior should not cry. A warrior should be strong. But another part of him, a new part that had not existed before he came to Earth, wondered something else. If was so weak, why was he still here? Why had he not quit? He had the option to leave at any time. No one was forcing him to stay. Yet every morning, despite his tears, despite his obvious fear, he got up and faced another day of pain. Maybe thought there was more than one kind of strength. He pushed the thought away and closed his eyes. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more confusion, more of these strange humans and their strange ways. He was beginning to understand that this place would not break his body. It was trying to break something else entirely. Week 4 brought the mountain march. 40 kilometers through rough terrain. Full combat packs weighing 30 kilograms. No rest stops. No excuses. This was the test that separated real Marines from everyone else. Many recruits had quit during this march over the years. Some had been carried away on stretchers. A few had nearly died. Staff Sergeant stood before the assembled recruits at dawn. The mountain loomed behind him, its peak hidden in gray clouds. A cold wind blew down from the heights, carrying the smell of pine trees and old snow. "Today you will walk through hell," said his voice carrying across the silent group. 40 kilometers, full gear. You will be tired. You will be in pain. Your body will beg you to stop. He paused. "You will not stop. You will not quit. You will finish this march or you will die trying. Am I understood?" "Yes, SIR," the recruits shouted as one. Stood among them, his pack adjusted for his larger frame. He was confident. His body was designed for endurance. His legs were powerful. 40 kilometers was nothing to him. Or so he thought. The march began well. The recruits moved in formation, their boots crunching on the rocky path. The sun rose higher, burning away the morning mist. The air grew warm, then hot. By kilometer 10, noticed something wrong. His feet hurt. This should not have been possible. His scales were tough. His muscles were strong. But the human boots he had been forced to wear were not designed for feet. The shape was wrong. The pressure points were wrong. Every step ground against his scales in ways that caused damage. By kilometer 15, the damage had become serious. His feet were blistering, actually blistering. This had never happened to him before. On his body was perfectly adapted to his environment. Here, everything was wrong. But that was not the worst problem. The worst problem was the heat. Was a cold planet. Were built for low temperatures. Their scales were designed to retain heat, not release it. Under the Korean summer sun, with a heavy pack on his back and steep hills to climb, his body was overheating. He could feel it happening. His thoughts were becoming slower. His vision was getting blurry at the edges. Sweat did not work for the way it worked for humans. He had no way to cool down. Sergeant O jogged up beside him. She was the field medic for this exercise, watching for recruits in danger. "You're overheating," she said. "Your skin color is changing. You need to stop." "Do not stop," replied through gritted teeth. "Your body temperature is dangerously high. Medical discharge is available. There would be no dishonor in it." I said no. Studied him for a moment, then fell back to check on other recruits. Pushed forward. Each step was agony. His feet were bleeding inside his boots now. The heat was making his head swim. The pack on his back felt like it weighed 1,000 kilograms. At kilometer 20, he began to fall behind. The human recruits passed him one by one. Lee, the one had carried during the run, gave him a worried look as he went by. Myra, the boxer, slowed down to match his pace for a moment. "You okay?" she asked. "Keep moving," growled. "I am fine." She did not look convinced, but she moved ahead. By kilometer 30, was alone at the back of the formation. His body was screaming at him to stop. His feet were ruined. His internal temperature was at dangerous levels. Every breath felt like fire in his lungs. He was going to fail. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He, champion of the Empire, victor of 847 battles, was going to fail a simple walking exercise because his body could not handle this planet. He stumbled on a rock and fell. The ground hit him hard. His pack pinned him down. He tried to get up, but his arms would not cooperate. His muscles were cramping from the heat. This is it, he thought. This is where it ends. He closed his eyes and waited for the shame of failure. Then he felt hands on him. Not one pair of hands, many. Opened his eyes and saw Lee pulling at his left arms. Myra was grabbing his right arms. Han, the one who cried every night, was trying to lift his torso. And Tiny, who barely reached his waist, had somehow gotten under his legs. "What are you doing?" asked, his voice weak. "Shut up," Myra grunted. "You're really heavy." "Leave me complete the march. This is not logical. You will fail if you—" "We're not leaving you," said. His thin face was red with effort, but his voice was firm. "Come on, we move together." "Why, this makes no sense. I am not part of your—" "Just shut up and let us help," said from somewhere beneath him. They lifted him. Did not know how. He weighed far more than all four of them combined. His pack alone was heavier than his entire body. Yet somehow, working together, they got him off the ground. They began to move. It was not walking. It was something slower, more painful, more awkward than walking. The four humans staggered under his weight. They gasped for breath. Their legs shook, but they did not stop. "Why are you doing this?" asked as they struggled forward. "Because," said his voice strained, "you came back for me. During the run, remember." That was an order. I was following instructions. No, shook his head. That was a choice. You just didn't know it yet. I could have refused. I should have refused. But you didn't. They walked, step by painful step, kilometer by agonizing kilometer. Other recruits saw what was happening. Some of them fell back to help. A young man named took over from when her legs gave out. A woman named supported Myra when she stumbled. By the time they reached the final stretch, there were 8 humans carrying 1 alien. The finish line appeared ahead. Staff Sergeant stood there, watching with an expression that could not read. They crossed the line. The official time was 7 minutes past the deadline. Technically, this was a failure. Everyone involved should have been marked as incomplete. Looked down at his clipboard. He looked at the 9 exhausted bodies collapsed on the ground, 8 humans and 1 alien, all tangled together, all gasping for breath, all covered in sweat and dirt and blood. He made a mark on his clipboard. Time recorded as within acceptable limits, he said quietly. Lying on his back, staring up at the cloudy sky, felt something strange happen in his chest. It was not a physical sensation. It was something else, something deeper. He turned his head and looked at the humans who had carried him. They were destroyed, looked like he might pass out. Myra was holding her side in obvious pain, was crying again, but this time with something that looked like joy, was lying flat on her back, laughing at the sky. Thank you, said. The words felt strange in his mouth. He was not sure he had ever said them before. Gratitude was seen as weakness. Accepting help was shameful. But here, in this moment, surrounded by these small, fragile, impossible humans, the words felt right. Turned her head and grinned at him. Welcome to the team, alien. Corporal appeared with water and medical supplies. She began treating ruined feet, her hands gentle and skilled. You failed the time requirement, she said softly. I know. How do you feel about that? Thought about the question. Failure was the worst thing that could happen to a warrior. It meant shame. It meant disgrace. It meant being cast out. But looking at the humans around him, these people who had sacrificed their own success to save him, he did not feel shame. He felt something else, something warmer. I feel, said slowly, like I am beginning to understand. Smiled. Good, that's a start. Above them, the clouds began to clear and the sun broke through. It was warm on scales, but for the first time since arriving on Earth, the warmth did not feel like an enemy. It felt like welcome. Something changed in after the mountain. It was not a sudden change, like a switch being flipped. It was slow and quiet, like water wearing away stone. Day by day, small pieces of his old self fell away, and something new began to grow in their place. He still could not fold sheets properly. His 4 arms seemed designed to fail at the precise, careful work that humans found so easy. Every morning inspection, Staff Sergeant found something wrong with his bed. The corners were off. The pillow was crooked. The blanket was wrinkled. Would say, and would remake it again. His cadence calls during runs were terrible. Vocal cords were not built for the rhythmic singing that human Marines used to keep pace. When tried to call out the cadences, he sounded like a dying animal. The other recruits tried not to laugh. They mostly failed. He kept bumping his head on door frames. The barracks were built for human heights and was constantly forgetting to duck. He had permanent bruises on his forehead. But these failures did not bother him anymore. What bothered him before, looking weak, needing help, being imperfect, now seemed unimportant. What mattered now was something else. During morning runs, no longer sprinted ahead to finish first. Instead, he stayed at the back of the group, matching pace with whoever was slowest. When hands struggled, ran beside him and told him stories about history. When short legs could not keep up, simply shortened his own stride. You could finish in half the time, pointed out one morning, gasping for breath. What would be the purpose of that? replied. Finishing alone is not finishing at all. During meals, no longer sat apart from the others. He squeezed his massive body onto the bench beside his squad mates and tried to participate in their conversations. He usually gave too much food to others. He still did not understand human portion sizes, but the recruits had learned to accept his generosity with grace. "I can't eat 3 rice balls," protested one evening. "You are too thin, eat." "I'm not thin, I'm normal-sized. You're just enormous." "Eat anyway, you need strength for tomorrow." At night, when the barracks fell silent, began asking questions. Not about combat or training, but about the humans themselves. "Tell me about your families," he said one night. The darkness was filled with shifting sounds as recruits turned to look at him. Asking about personal matters was strange coming from the alien, who had spent his first weeks treating them like obstacles. Lee spoke first. "My father is a fisherman he wanted me to take over the boat, but I wanted something different. He was angry when I joined the Marines." He paused. "He writes me letters now. He says he's proud." "My mother raised me alone," Myra said. Her voice was softer than usual. "She worked 2 jobs, never complained. I joined the Marines because I wanted to be strong like her." Hant's voice came from across the room. "My grandmother survived the war in 1950. She walked for weeks with my infant mother on her back. She always told me that strength is not about fighting. It's about surviving, about never giving up." One by one, the recruits shared their stories, their families, their dreams, their fears. The darkness made it easier to talk about things that daylight would have hidden. Finally asked, "What about you? Do you have a family?" Was silent for a long moment. "Do not have families in the way you mean. We are bred for specific purposes. Warriors are raised in training camps from birth. I do not know who my biological parents were. I have never had what you would call a mother or father." The barracks fell very quiet. "That sounds lonely," said softly. "I never thought of it that way," replied. "Loneliness is a weakness, are not supposed to feel it." "That's stupid," Myra said. "Everyone feels lonely sometimes." "Perhaps. I am beginning to think that many things I believed about weakness were wrong." The final weeks of training brought new challenges. Combat evaluations, marksmanship tests, navigation exercises, and the most dreaded challenge of all, the gas chamber. The gas chamber was a small building where recruits were exposed to tear gas as part of their chemical warfare training. They had to enter the chamber, remove their masks, recite their identification numbers, and remain inside until permitted to leave. For humans, it was extremely painful but manageable. Their bodies were designed to handle the effects. For it was something else entirely. His respiratory system was different from human lungs. He breathed through slits along his neck, not through a nose and mouth. The gas affected these slits differently, more intensely, more painfully. His body had no way to process the chemicals. The moment his mask came off, Swirled exploded into agony. The gas burned through his respiratory slits like liquid fire. His vision went white. His 4 arms flailed uselessly, knocking against the walls of the small chamber. His translator screamed error messages as his brain struggled to function through the pain. He could not think, he could not see, he could not breathe. He was drowning in chemical fire, and there was no escape. Then he heard a voice. "Hey, listen to me." The voice cut through the chaos. It was familiar, it was. "I'm right here, right beside you. Listen to my voice." Tried to focus. Through the burning tears streaming from his eyes, he could barely make out a small figure standing next to him. Was suffering too. The gas was affecting him just as badly, but his voice was calm and steady. "Breathe slow," said. "In through your slits, out the same way, don't fight it, just breathe. We do it together, ready." Tried to speak, but could only make a choking sound. "In," said and took a slow breath. "Out, in, out, follow me, you can do this." focused on the small human beside him. He matched his breathing to his rhythm. In, out, in, out. The pain was still there, still overwhelming, but now there was something else too. An anchor, a point of stability in the chaos. Now, said, what is your identification number? His translator crackled as his brain struggled to form words. V, champion, identification, 774. Good, keep going. 39, alpha. Perfect, almost done, stay with me. The chamber door opened. Fresh air flooded in. Stumbled out, coughing and gasping, his body shaking uncontrollably. He collapsed on the grass outside, his respiratory slits burning with every breath. Collapsed beside him. The young human was crying and coughing, his face red and swollen from the gas. But he was smiling. We did it, gasped. We did it together. Turned his head to look at the small human. This fragile creature who could not run as fast, could not lift as much, could not fight as well. This person had just saved him. Not with strength or speed or combat skill, but with presence, with courage, with the simple act of being there. Thank you, said. The words came easier now than they had before. That's what teammates do, replied. We don't leave each other behind. Lay on the grass, staring up at the sky, feeling the fresh air slowly clear the poison from his body. Around him, other recruits were recovering from their own ordeal. Myra was helping to his feet, was pouring water over her face. Everyone was suffering, but everyone was also helping each other. This, realized, was what the humans meant by strength. It was not about being the best. It was not about winning alone. It was about being there for each other, especially when things were hardest. It was about turning individual weakness into collective power. Had conquered 17 star systems with military force. But humans had built something different, something that might in the end be even more powerful. They had built families, teams, bonds that no weapon could break. And now, lying on the grass with his human squad mates around him, felt like he might finally be part of one. Graduation day arrived under a perfect blue sky. The parade ground was clean and bright. Flags from a dozen nations flew alongside the Republic of Korea Marine Corps banner. Chairs had been set up for families and officials. Camera drones floated overhead, recording everything for news channels across the planet and beyond. Stood in formation with his platoon. His uniform was slightly wrong. Human clothes simply did not fit bodies correctly, and his posture was off because the position of attention was designed for beings with 2 arms, not 4. His scales were dull from weeks of stress, unfamiliar food, and inadequate sleep. On paper he had failed. Bed inspection, fail. Uniform inspection, fail. Time trials, mixed results with several below minimum standards. Protocol memorization, fail. Sheet folding, permanent fail. The only categories where he had excelled were combat and physical strength, and even those were marked with notes about his inability to work within standard human fighting formations. By every official measure, was not qualified to graduate. But he was standing in formation anyway. Staff Sergeant had not removed him. No one had told him to leave. A shimmer of light appeared above the parade ground. The air crackled with energy, and then a holographic image materialized, 12 feet tall, glowing faintly blue, utterly intimidating. High Commander. The commander's image looked down at the assembled humans and the single alien in their midst. His expression was one of confident expectation. He had sent his greatest warrior to demonstrate superiority, and now he would witness the obvious results. Champion's voice boomed across the parade ground. Report your status. Stepped forward from the formation. Every eye was on him, human and alien alike. Corporal watched from the sidelines. Staff Sergeant stood at attention nearby, his face unreadable. I have failed, High Commander, said. The parade ground fell absolutely silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. His holographic face showed confusion. Explain. I could not fold sheets to standard. I could not memorize protocols within the required. I could not maintain proper uniform standards. I could not complete several timed exercises within acceptable limits. These are trivial matters, said, waving one massive hand dismissively. What of your combat evaluations? My combat scores were exceptional, High Commander. Then you have succeeded. What does it matter if you cannot fold sheets? These humans and their foolish rituals are meaningless. You have proven that warriors are superior in the areas that truly matter. Was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, but somehow stronger. No, High Commander, I have not succeeded, and these rituals are not meaningless. Another wave of silence. His image flickered with what might have been surprise. Explain yourself, champion. Turned slightly, looking at his platoon. At thin and tired but standing straight. At Myra, fierce and proud. At who no longer cried at night. At small but unbreakable. I failed because I did not understand, said. When I arrived here, I believed that combat skill was all that mattered. I believed that strength was measured by how much weight you could lift, how fast you could run, how many enemies you could defeat. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I was wrong. Combat is the smallest part of what makes these warriors. They do not train to fight alone. They train to suffer together. They train to carry each other when one falls. They train to find strength in their weakness by transforming that weakness into unity. Gestured at his platoon. This human, Lee, has half my physical strength. Yet when I collapsed on a mountain, he carried me. This one weighs almost nothing. Yet her spirit is harder than any steel. Their drill instructor, staff sergeant, could not defeat me in single combat. Yet he has built an army that will never retreat, never abandon their own, never stop fighting. His image flickered again. This is sentiment, champion, emotion, weakness. No, High Commander. This is why 17 conquered star systems still resist you. The words hung in the air like thunder. Our empire sends individual warriors to crush opposition. We win battles. We take territory, but we do not hold it. Resistance movements grow in every system we conquer. Rebellions spring up again and again. We spend more resources maintaining control than we gained by conquering in the first place. His voice grew stronger. Humans do not fight as individuals. They fight as families, as teams, as something larger than themselves. When one falls, the others carry the burden. When one is weak, the others are strong. They do not have our physical power, but they have something else, something we have never understood. And what is that? Demanded. Each other. The human audience watched in fascination. Some of the family members were crying. The officials looked stunned. I have failed their standards, High Commander, continued. But in failing, I have learned what the Empire has never understood. We measure strength by what an individual can do alone. Humans measure strength by what they can do together. He turned to face his platoon fully. These people taught me that asking for help is not weakness, it is wisdom. They taught me that carrying a fallen comrade is not inefficiency, it is honor. They taught me that belonging to something larger than yourself does not make you smaller, it makes you infinite. Face the hologram again. Humans are not strong because they are physically powerful. They are powerful because they refuse to let each other fail. Their weakness is their strength, because it teaches them to rely on one another. And an army that fights for each other will always defeat an army that fights alone. His image was silent for a long moment. You speak like one who has lost his way, champion. No, High Commander, I speak like one who has finally found it. Another long silence, then his image began to fade. We will discuss this further upon your return, the High Commander said coldly. This is not over. The hologram disappeared, stood alone in the center of the parade ground for a moment. Then he felt a hand on one of his arms. Staff Sergeant had walked out to stand beside him. The drill instructor who had screamed at him, punished him, pushed him to his limits, now looked at him with something that might have been respect. "You didn't pass our test," said quietly, "but you learned our lesson. That matters more than any certificate." From somewhere produced a small box. He opened it and held it out too. Inside was a set of military dog tags. They were unofficial. They would never appear in any record, but they were real, made of real metal, with real words stamped into them. THEX Platoon 247, never quit. Took the tags with trembling hands. His translator struggled to process the emotions flooding through him. This small piece of metal meant more than all 847 of his combat victories combined. Corporal approached with something else, a folded flag covered in signatures. Every member of his platoon had signed it. Some had written messages. "Thank you for coming back for me. You're one of us now. Best alien ever." Stepped out of formation, grinning. "Come back sometime. We'll teach you to fold sheets properly." "I would like that," said, and found that he meant it completely. Myra followed, punching him lightly on the arm, a gesture that would have broken a human bone. "Don't let those idiots push you around." "I will not." Was crying again, but smiling. "You helped me believe I could finish. I won't forget that." Simply hugged one of his legs, the only part of him she could reach. Family doesn't end just because training does. Looked at them, these small, fragile, impossible humans who had somehow become the most important beings in his life. He had come here expecting to demonstrate superiority. Instead, he had found something he never knew he was missing. A home. Hours later, as his transport ship lifted off from Earth, composed a message to High Commander. It would be transmitted as soon as he reached space. Humanity's application to the Galactic Coalition should be approved immediately. They have demonstrated qualities that the Empire lacks and desperately needs. He paused, then added, "And with respect, High Commander, never send another warrior to challenge them. Send students instead. There is much we need to learn." The blue planet grew smaller in his viewport. Somewhere down there, his platoon was returning to their lives, would go home to his father's fishing boat. Myra would see her mother, would hug his grandmother, would return to whatever mysterious life had shaped her unbreakable spirit, and would carry all of them with him wherever he went. He looked down at the dog tags hanging around his neck. Never quit. He never would. Because now he understood the truth that humans had always known. No one was strong enough to face the universe alone. But together, they were strong enough for anything.